Hey guys, Scarecrow here. I'm here today to do a deck profile for you guys on my Nectar deck that I played this past weekend at ARG Orlando and at the Circuit Series. We had 54 players. I finished in second place. For the deck profile, starting Vanguard, just like every other deck. 4 heal, 4 PG draw, and 8 crit. Pretty standard. You really don't need to play extra draws in this deck. Grade 1s, 2 Corolla Dragon, because it gets big when you call multiple things, which happens like every turn. 3 Rebecca. I'm not a huge fan of this card, but it's okay. It's okay. It's not super helpful. I wish it didn't have the Soul Blast. Then I'd probably like it more, but... For Merca, the best thing to ride turn 1, you get a free token. And arguably the best grade 1 in the deck, Fruits Basket Elf. This card is super good. Grade 2s, for Sylvia, best thing to ride, get a token. For Tree Sage, he buffs his column and draws a card. He's pretty good. And this was like my tech choice, and I call it tech because like most people you see playing this deck are playing Cavant, I think is his name, instead of this card, and you are playing it wrong if you're playing Cavant. You should be playing Spinach Advisor. This thing is the same thing as Corolla Dragon. It buffs every time something's called by an effect. Why does this make it better than Cavant? Well, typically, Cavant in this, unless you just for some reason have 4 tokens when you play Cavant, which isn't very likely, Cavant isn't going to really get bigger than this in terms of like if this thing was there and you made 4 tokens, they'd both be pretty big. And the difference is this thing is there every single turn. Cavant's just in the Pulam. Spinach just sits there and it gets buff for your deck just doing what your deck does every single turn. Like this thing, people will actually attack it because it's so good. So yeah, don't waste your time with Cavant. Play this card. For the 3s, obviously we have our big boss lady, Cecilia. This card is stupidly good. So freaking good. Counterblast 1 to call 3 cards, deck them, and give the front row plus 10. Like, this card is absurd. Then we have our 4 Exploding Tomato. Another really freaking good card. This card should be like double rare at least. The skill to power up and draw, and then the skill to like make tokens, so good. Like you can do like really cool things with him. Like you could do something like have like a field like this, attack with him first, then pop them off to make tokens, and then cards like Corolla Dragon and Spinach Advisor here will just buff mid battle phase just for you doing what you were gonna do anyways. And then the last card of the deck, 1 Maiden of the Trailing Rose. It's not like ideal, but it's a pretty decent, okay like ride. Like if you have to ride this first before you're gonna ride Cecilia, it's not bad at all. And there was actually like a few games where I actually rode her on top of Cecilia to go for the game. Or the turn before when I was on Cecilia, I did Cecilia's skill, used up the Soul Blast because I knew on the next turn I was gonna ride this card, make tokens, buff up my field, go for game. But yeah, it's a pretty good card. And she works on Rearguard to make 1 token, so yeah. That is it for the deck profile. I finished second place. My 1 loss was in round 5, second to last round, to OTT. I honestly should have not lost that game. It was, in the first game, like I just had like, even though I was on like Cecilia and deck thing like 2-3 cards like every single turn, I just kept like four drive checks or like four twin drives in a row. Drive check nothing, drive check nothing, drive check nothing, drive check nothing. I ended up dying with like 12 cards and 9 of them being triggers. Like, what even is that? And the game, and then later on, to finish the matchup, like, he rode 8 times. He healed 4 times. He hit 4 draw triggers. Like, he would not die. And I ended up decking out, like, because I was 1 card behind him decking out. I don't even know what he was doing. Like, because he rode like 8 times, he kept having perfect guards. And because he rode 8 times, he had tons of grade 3s to use deer on me. And he had deer. It was on the rear guard, and he just wasn't using it. He was like riding Imperial Daughter, checking the top card, it was a heal, and putting it back and not using deer. And if had he been doing so, I would have died so much faster. Because he wasn't using the deer, I was able to just use triggers to block all of his attacks, and I was like saving my PGs, saving my PGs. I'm like, by the time you finally deer, I could just PG all 3 of your attacks. And because it took him so long to finally use the deer, he had like no crits left to get out of it, and I had my PGs left. It like he couldn't even really kill me, and it was just I ran out of deck. Had he actually like been using his deer, like the turn that he rode and decided to keep a heal on top, if he had put that heal on the bottom and used deer, the heal would have gone to bottom. The cards that weren't crits, which he didn't get crits, would have gone to the bottom and pushed that heal up. And then next turn he could use deer again. Look at the cards, put it on the bottom, push that heal up. That heal would have like 10, 12 cards below it, pushing it even further up. And he would eventually have gotten back to that heal anyway. He could have even at one point just like no guard at 5 and healed, had he been paying attention to it, but whatever. It's RNG. You can only play as best as like possible. You can't always like, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you're just unlucky. Sometimes your opponent's just too lucky. You just gotta play your best. But yeah, that's it for the deck profile. Thank you for watching.